What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another response video. I did one yesterday in response to Necrotic Nick from Thralls of Metal. This time around, I'm responding to my, practically like my little brother, fellow co-host of the Shadow Call podcast and the Horseman podcast, Ricky, a.k.a. Horror Master, which I will link his channel in the description box below. You guys should check out his stuff. He does album rankings, collection updates, so on and so forth. And he did a video a little while back showcasing rare CDs in his collection. And I thought, after watching that video and he was asking me, hey, would you like to do a response to it? Took me a little bit to get to it, but now that I remembered, we're actually going to do this video. So I am showcasing 10 albums here that I think are rare, hard to find, or at the very least hard to find cheap and a decent copy. So keep in mind that some of these were actually like reissues on different labels, but even those reissues are hard to find as well. So these are all in alphabetical order. I'll talk about what the rarest one in the collection is really soon, because it's actually going to be pretty early in the video when I bring it up. But without further ado, let's take a look at 10 of my rarest CDs in my collection, and we're going to kick things off with Broken Hopes, Bowels of Repugnance. And the reason why this one is particularly rare is because this is the original release from Metal Blade Records in 1993. I forgot where I got it from. I think I got it off of eBay from somebody for like 20 bucks. And with used CDs, I'm often a little bit skeptical because you never know how the discs are in shape. But this disc, like two little scuffs, but it plays perfectly, and I was able to rip it perfectly onto the computer whenever I got it. So yeah, this is a rare one. Like I said, it's the original pressing from Metal Blade 1993, and this is their first album on Metal Blade. They were on Grindcore International Records for their amazing debut, the best album they ever did, Swamped in Gore. I thought about putting that on here, but since it's been reissued through a couple of different labels in recent years, like Flaga Records and Marquee Records, I don't think it's that rare anymore. Whereas Bowels of Repugnance, I have yet to see a reissue for it from any label in the world, at least to my knowledge. So the fact that I got the original pressing from Metal Blade makes this a rare gem in the collection. And the album itself is fucking fantastic. Definitely a very close second to Swamped in Gore in my eyes. Granted, it's shorter, but the songs still pack a punch. And rest in peace, Joe Ficek and Ryan Stanek. Now we get to the actual rarest album in the collection, and it was one that I was surprised to have found online last year, and that is Cro-Mag's Best Wishes. This is also an original pressing from Profile Records 1989. So, yeah, and the funny story about how I found this, I was going through, like, this was like right before an episode of the Horseman podcast, right before we went on the air for an episode. I was just scouring through a couple of different online CD distros that I found. The one that I found this on was MiamiMetalMerchant.com, which actually has some really cool stuff. I've bought from them several times, whether it was off the actual website or from their Discogs page. But what's cool about this is how I got it. I was going through Miami Metal Merchant, just seeing what all they had, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, I see this CD for just 14 bucks. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm buying that shit right now, because I didn't care if I was running low on cash or what have you. I wanted this album in the worst possible way, because I listened to it on YouTube many times in like high school, or like towards the end of high school and such. This is one of my favorite crossover thrash albums of all time. Maybe my personal favorite, neck and neck with Speak English or Die by SOD and a couple of others. But yeah, this is also the original pressing from 1989 on Profile Records. And to find a good copy of this cheap, good luck. if you're going to try and find a good copy of this album, you're going to have to pay a shit ton of money. Thankfully, $14 was all I had to pay. But yeah, this is a great album, and definitely the rarest in the collection, bar none. Next up, now this one is a reissue from Icarus Records, licensed through Century Media, but even at that, it's still pretty rare to find. Demolition Hammers, Tortured Existence. The classic debut album from this New York-based death thrash band, or just thrash metal, whatever you want to call them. And what was cool with this album was it was recorded at More Sound Studios with Scott Burns as the producer, and did a hell of a job on this album for the most part. Now, what makes this rare is I had tried to find a cheap, decent copy of this album through any means for a long time, because for so long I had Epidemic of Violence, their second album, and I wanted to get the debut to complete the first two albums, because I'm not really going to get Time Bomb, because that album bombed. No pun intended. But for so long, I was just trying to find a cheap, good copy, and I could not find it for the life of me, even through Discogs. Then, this, as well as the next album I'm going to show off, and as well as a bunch of other albums that I got, found on eBay through, like, a wholesale lot of somebody having a bunch of albums. And I saw the list, and it's like, he's got some gems in there that I could really use. So I got in contact with the guy and I said, hey, I can't afford to buy the entire lot, but there are certain CDs in that photo I would like to buy off of you individually. He cut me a good deal. It was about $60 for like 5 or 6 CDs. And this was one of them. Same with the next one I'm going to talk about. But I was so happy to get this. Yeah, it's not the original release from Century Media, but Icarus Records does a great job with doing reissues of a lot of underground albums. Hell, I got a couple of reissues they did for Morgoth and for Sodom in particular. Now this one's in the family. But yeah, this album's fantastic top to bottom. Nothing more, nothing less to be said. Alright, and then to continue on with that lot that I got that CD from, I also got Dismember, Like an Ever-Flowing Stream. And this is another reissue. This was from Willowtip Records. Because over the years, this album had been reissued through Hammerhard Records. It was originally released on Nuclear Blast Records. And for so long, I had been trying to find a cheap, decent copy of an actual release and not a bootleg of this album. And through that lot that I found on eBay, I was able to get this. And it's in great shape too. Like the disc itself, maybe just like 1 or 2 scuffs and maybe a little fingerprint, but plays perfectly. And overall, it's an all-time classic. This and Left Hand Path, or a Left Hand Path by Entomb, that is, really launched the Swedish death metal scene. And great news for fans of Dismembered that have been wanting to get some of their classic stuff. They just announced that they actually re-signed to Nuclear Blast Records, because it's looking like we're going to get a new album from them, which I can't wait for. And they confirmed that towards later in the year, they're going to do reissues on CD, vinyl, and cassette of their Nuclear Blast albums from the 90s. So, good chance we're going to get a reissue of this album on Nuclear Blast, and if that happens, hands down, I'm going to buy it, and I might do a giveaway for this one, possibly, or sell it, what have you, or just give it to a friend. But, yeah, this is a rare one. Yeah, it's the reissue from Willowtip, which was 10 years ago, but even the Willowtip reissue is hard to find, too. Even the Hammerhard one's hard to find for some reason. But yeah, Dismember, Like an Ever-Flowing Stream. Now this is another reissue, but even the reissue itself is hard to find now. I was lucky to get this when I did. Immolation, Dawn of Possession. Now, this was originally released on Roadrunner Records back in 1991. This is a reissue that I got from, this is a 2015 reissue on Listenable Records. So it seems like Listenable Records, I think, got the licensing to some of the old Roadrunner catalog and was able to reissue it for those who couldn't find the Roadrunner pressings, and this was one of them. It would be cool if I could find the actual Roadrunner pressing, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. And besides, I'm fine with getting this, because also I think the reissue upped the sound quality a little bit for me. But, yeah, I think I got this one for about 20 bucks last year. I can't remember if I got off of eBay or Discogs. I can't remember, but this is a fantastic debut. Probably, in my opinion, the best Demolition album. I don't know. It's a two-legged race between this and Close to a World Below for the best Demolition album, and you'll find that out someday if I decide to rank Demolition albums. But yeah, top to bottom, it's a fantastic album. And even this reissue, yeah, it's hard to find for some reason. But if you can find it, definitely pick it up. Whether it's the Listenable Records reissue, or hell, if you find a cheap, good copy of the original Roadrunner release, definitely try and snag your hands on that. So, Demolition Dawn of Possession. This one might be the second rarest? No, maybe actually the third rarest CD in this video, and this is another original pressing, and that is Internal Bleeding's Voracious Contempt, the debut album, 1995, from the pioneers of Slam. Now, despite how I feel about Slam death metal, and I'm not really the biggest fan except for this album and maybe some stuff from Devourment, but when it comes to doing Slam right without getting too overindulgent, I think this album does it really well. The guitars are fucking disgusting. The bass is amazing on here. Of course, the drums, the percussion on it's incredible, especially with the breakdowns, because that is what Slam is all about. But they're able to balance everything out properly. Like, there's some technical bits, there's some grooves, like some brutal death metal grooves going on. So I don't consider it to be 100% Slam. I would say it's like 50% brutal death metal, 50% Slam, with some technical moments here and there. But yeah, I actually really love this album. Probably my only enjoyable Slam album to listen to, because like I said, I'm not big into Slam, apart from this album and some songs from Devourment. But this album I absolutely love. Yeah, the bass and the drums kind of overpowered the guitars a little bit. And it was actually mixed by Scott Burns, so it was kind of shocking. But yeah, this is an original pressing from Pavement Music, the label that they were on for this album. And I was lucky to have found it cheap on, I think it was Discogs as well. Discogs is a hell of a tool, for sure, to buy some obscure shit. And this is no exception. If you like death metal with some breakdowns, and if you're unsure about Slam, I would say give this album a chance, and I think you'll enjoy it. Granted, everything afterwards in terms of Slam, I don't like. But this album, for being the first Slam album, they were able to show everybody how to do it, and do it without being too overindulgent. Next up, and I think this is the latest album, well, not the latest in terms of release, but the latest one I got in the collection that's rare, and that is Mithras, Forever Advancing Legions, 2002 debut from this British experimental death metal band, and this is the original release on Candlelight Records, and this album is absolutely underrated and fantastic. Basically, if you love Morbid Angel, you're going to love Mithras, especially this album. Like, after this album, they got a little bit more out there in their sound, whereas this was mostly kind of straightforward death metal with some experimental moments, like with atmosphere and different kind of soundscapes. But the reason I say that this band loves their Morbid Angel, especially in, like, the production, it feels like Covenant, Domination, and Formulas Fatal to the Flesh era Morbid Angel in terms of production, especially them drums, like, wow. And even songwriting-wise, they took a lot of cues from Morbid Angel, in particular, Wrath of God practically is Where the Slime Live Part 2, essentially. But it's a great song. Tomb of Kings is insanely technical. Also, Dreaming in Splendor, As the Wind Blows, and even like the more classical, like ambient tracks, I really like to kind of build the mood to the heavier tracks. So yeah, if you can find this cheap and it's in good condition, definitely snag it. I was so glad I did when I did. This is a hell of an album. Now I think perhaps to the second rarest CD, because it's, third. I don't know. It's kind of hard to gauge because you could find this cheap anywhere. But the next one on the list, Monstrosity, Imperial Doom. And this is another original pressing. This is 1992 Nuclear Blast Records release of the debut album from Monstrosity. Of course, Corpse Grinder from Cannibal Corpse. This was the band he was in prior to joining Cannibal, and this was his first full album work. And it's a fantastic debut. It's almost tech death at times, so this could also be a bit of a bit of a milestone album, perhaps, for technical death metal, because there are some great guitar. There's a lot of great guitar work on here. Corpse Grinder's vocals, you could definitely hear early on where his vocals would eventually go to where he is now. But yeah, this is rare because, like I said, this is the original pressing from 1992 on Nuclear Blast Records. I remember telling people about it and they thought it was a bootleg, and then I looked it up. No, this is the original pressing, and I was able to get it for like 16, 17 bucks on eBay, so it's definitely a hell of a grab, and this is a hell of an album too. The title track, Ceremonial Void, Final Cremation in particular is a very, very nasty song. And an interesting lineup too, because Corpse Grinder, you also got, of course, Lee Harrison, who's also in Terrorizer now, Mark Vanderp on bass, John Rubin on guitar, and Jason Goobel, who would be in Cynic for the album Focus. He was on guitar as well. So interesting lineup, to say the very least. So yeah, if you are a fan of death metal, definitely check this album out. And if you can find it cheap and it's the original pressing, pick it up, because it is a hell of a debut. Now for the second to last album on this list. This one, I was kind of unsure if I wanted to get it, but I thought to myself, well, after I saw it, it was cheap, and also I would like to have the other version of the album. We have Sodom, Obsessed by Cruelty. And this right here is the original pressing from 1986 on SPV Steamhammer Records. Now, I say there are two versions out there because there are two recordings of this album, and I talked about it during the Sodom album ranking. You can go back and watch for full details. But long story short, they recorded the first session in standard guitar tuning, and SPV didn't like it, so Metal Blade released the original recording, whereas they had to re-record and also add an extra song, and this was recorded in D tuning, and that version would be released. So I have both versions of this album. I have the original recording that was released on Metal Blade, even though it's combined within the Sign of Evil and it was an Icarus Records reissue. But I also have the re-recording in D-tuning that SPV released in '86. I think I also got this one for like 16, 17 bucks, and it was in fantastic shape. And I was like, fuck it, I'll take both versions just to have both versions. Be one of the few people in the world to have both recordings of this debut. And the album itself is great, despite sloppy playing at times and the production not being great. It's fun for that reason, because it was very influential on Norwegian black metal. But yeah, Sodom, Obsessed by Cruelty. And then the final album in this video that is pretty rare, because good luck trying to find it cheap, but Typo Negative's Dead Again. Their final album, 2007, on SPV Steamhammer as well. Now, this is the most expensive album I've ever bought, and the reason why is because this is actually a rare 2-disc edition. This was actually a Best Buy exclusive. I got it for 37 bucks, which some people may look at as too much. I was willing to get it because it was in good shape, and it also had a bonus live DVD. And plus, like I said, it was a Best Buy exclusive, so very few copies of this album exist. So I was like, fuck it, I'll take it. And also, I was just desperate to try and get the Typo Negative discography, and I was willing to go however I can to get this album. And it's a great album, too. It was a great way to close it out, because they were able to kind of balance their gothic side and their more punky side from the early days of Typo and Carnivore. And yeah, this was a great album. May you rest in peace, Peter Steele. Can't believe you're gone still. But, yeah, that is my list of the 10 rarest albums I have in my collection. I got a few others in the collection that would be considered rare that I didn't bring up in this video, but I wanted to whittle it down to 10, and I think that those 10 were pretty rare for different reasons, of course. But, for you guys who are watching this video that have CDs in your collection, make a response video if you have a YouTube channel. Let me know what rare albums you guys have in your collection. And also, out of these 10 albums I showcased, which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comments section below. And until next time, horns high. See you guys soon.
Yeah, so music, I think it was just kind of hearing like my parents listen to like just whatever they were listening to around the house, and like flipping through the music channels on TV. I'm not sure if you had what was like in the US and things, but in the UK we had like a few channels like Kerrang, Scuzz, things like that, which would play your kind of anything kind of mainstream at the time, if you could say so. Like you would get Slipknot, System of a Down,
yes,
and loads of like Sum 41, Linkin Park, and all that kind of stuff.